Evolution has always been a necessary and inseparable part of survival. Predators got smarter to become even more dangerous. Herbivores got bigger to defend themselves better. Some even learned to fly. But there was one who chose his own path. Stegosaurus. He got dumber. Literally, with every passing million years, his brain kept shrinking. And yet, at the same time, he became one of the most successful and most famous dinosaurs of his era, and a real threat to the biggest predators. But how did this 30-foot-long tank manage to dominate with a brain the size of a walnut? Why did Stegosaurus get dumber while everyone else got smarter? And most importantly, is it true he had a second brain in his ass? Spoiler, yes. This is Kentaurus. He appeared around 200 million years ago, back when dinosaurs themselves still weren't sure what they wanted to be. And while some bet on teeth or size, this one chose armor. His body was covered in osteoderms. Those are bony plates in the skin that would later become a signature feature of many dinosaurs. But for now, they were small, simple inserts, like a teenager's first tattoos, a symbol of growing up, but they look kinda cringe. Kentaurus was small, bipedal, ran around the wastelands, and most likely just tried not to die. No shields, no spikes, zero weapons. And while he didn't look like much, he laid the groundwork for a whole new direction: armored dinosaurs. It was he who would, millions of years later, become the ancestor of ankylosaurs and stegosaurs. But before he could carry even more armor, he had to get down on all fours. A low-res CGI Scelidosaurus from some old documentaries slowly crawls along the shore of an ancient sea. His teeth are as blunt as the plot of the last Jurassic World movie, but he doesn't need to cut. He just chews. His body is covered in dense bony plates along his back and sides. That kind of armor could actually save you from a predator. This is the first fully protected dinosaur we know. He doesn't know it yet, but millions of years later, that armor will become pop culture legend, and on that same armor, something new is already starting to grow, something more dangerous. Hyangiosaurus. The first one you can clearly recognize as a stegosaur. Small, about 4 meters. But compact doesn't mean weak. It means maneuverable. Double rows of plates down the back, shoulder spikes, and 4 daggers on the tail. He looks like he grew up in London. But in reality, he lived in what's now China, Middle Jurassic. The predators weren't top tier yet, but they were fast and hungry. Hyangiosaurus didn't run, didn't hide, he stood and stabbed. Even if he didn't survive, he'd be remembered. But the brain couldn't keep up. As the shields grew larger and the spikes longer, the skull shrank. Hyangiosaurus wasn't stupid, he just wasn't given any room to evolve. In evolution's resource queue, the brain was dead last. His whole body was shifting backwards, mass, balance, motion. The neck shortened, jaws dulled, and the head became more about carrying nostrils than thoughts. From a survival standpoint, it worked. The simpler the system, the faster it reacts. While the predator was still thinking, he was already stabbing. In Hyangiosaurus, something called the sacral plexus starts to enlarge, a part of the spinal cord near the pelvis that controls the hind legs and tail. In his descendants, this area will become hypertrophied, and that's what people will later call the second brain. Not because it's a brain, but because the actual one doesn't run the show anymore. He could still orient himself, move in a group, and recognize his own, but complex actions, memory, spatial planning, that was already fading. And even that wasn't enough. Hyangiosaurus was still balancing, some armor, some mobility, some brain, but his descendant will make the final call. The plates will disappear, only spikes will remain, and the skull will have less space than the spinal cord. Evolution will move the command center south of the waist, and with that will come a new stegosaurid, one that lives on the edge of paranoia and madness. Kentaurus, 5 meters long, but you can barely see the body. From neck to tail, spikes, spikes, and more spikes. Even the shoulders are punctured. 2 giant bone knives stick out sideways. And none of it is decoration. It's a design that says one thing: I'm not waiting for you to bite me. Kentaurus appeared in the late Jurassic, in Africa, around 155 million years ago. His world was the dawn of the giant predators. Allosaurs, Torvosaurs, Megalosaurids. They weren't sneaking around anymore. They hunted in the open, and Kentaurus didn't run. He turned his body into a trap. The plate Hyungosaurus still had, almost completely gone, replaced with a symmetrical line of spikes down the spine, like a giant "do not touch" sign. Scientists still argue about those shoulder spikes. Were they for protection from above, side sweeps, mating disputes? But one thing is clear, they were functional. Just having them meant reshaping the entire shoulder blade. Kentaurus literally rewired its skeleton just to get 2 more spikes. Kentaurus was dangerous, but his evolution folded in on itself. Too many weapons, too little flexibility. It was a dead end. To escape that, it wasn't enough to just change the shape. The environment had to change, and with it, the continent. In the late Jurassic, most land was still part of the supercontinent Pangaea, but it had already started to crack. Between Africa, Europe, and North America, land bridges opened up from time to time, and stegosaurs, like many other dinosaurs, followed the climate. Where it was warmer, where the food was better, where competition was lower. It was a slow drift of populations scattered across half-connected territories. That's how they ended up in Western Laurasia. New conditions, new predators, and a whole new bet in the evolutionary game. Stegosaurus had no business being a legend. Slow, kind of dumb, head about the height of a dog, and yet somehow his silhouette became iconic. Maybe it's the 17 massive plates sticking out along his back, or the tail with 4 spikes, known as the thagomizer, a term born in a comic strip now accepted in scientific papers. He lived in the late Jurassic, in what's now Western North America. And by then, the most dangerous predators of the era were already roaming around. Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Torvosaurus. 9 meters long, up to 4 tons, huge back legs, stubby front ones, low to the ground, heavy in the middle, a perfect platform for swinging the tail in every direction. He didn't run, he warned, and if the warning didn't work, there were consequences. Punctured thighs, shattered spines, ruptured allosaur livers. And he had something unexpected, a friend, which sounds ridiculous for an animal with a brain smaller than an egg. But almost every time we find Stegosaurus, we also find another herbivore nearby, sometimes literally in the same fossil layer. In 2008, their footprints were found together for the first time. Kentaurus, smaller, lighter, no armor, but bigger eyes, and no offense to Stegosaurus, a noticeably bigger brain. This wasn't friendship in the human sense, it was a partnership. One saw the danger, the other delivered the punishment. Kentaurus could spot a predator early and alert the group. Stegosaurus waited for the signal, and when the Allosaurus came charging, one ran, the other turned. One strike, and even a predator with knife-sized teeth understood there wouldn't be a second chance. But the brain of Stegosaurus, that's a topic of its own. Around 80 grams, smaller than a cat's, proportionally the smallest of any known dinosaur. And that's exactly why he had another one, down near the pelvis. In the sacral region, the spinal cord expanded so much it could coordinate the tail and the back legs on its own. While the head was deciding what to chew, the tail had already picked someone to hit. In fact, despite being dumb as bricks, Stegosaurus was surprisingly dangerous and aggressive. They beat smaller herbivores, either to show off to predators or because they were so foolish that they really couldn't tell the difference. But weirdly enough, it worked. Shocked allosaurs would just back off, not wanting to mess with a 7-ton psychopath. After all, evolution isn't about intelligence, it's about outcomes. Stegosaurus didn't analyze, didn't strategize, didn't form packs. He just walked forward. And if something stood in his way, it got a tail spike to the ribs. Turns out, sometimes being the dumbest thing in the ecosystem is the smartest move you can make.